New World Order organization is all a setup and you fell for it. Why it was all a setup? First of all, I need to mention that what I'm explaining here is based on a lot of assumptions trying to piece together what happened in a way that makes sense. On my own, I'm not able to verify all these assumptions. Some of them might be wrong, might have happened differently, but the general outcome in our present day is still what it is. Therefore, I welcome anyone who has more accurate insights, whether it is to prove me wrong or to substantiate any of my assumptions here. When scientists in the 1930s started to make progress in understanding how to split the atom, an alien race decided to make first contact with a group of scientists. They were likely working at Berkeley, California, where in 1930 the first particle accelerator, the cyclotron, was built. These aliens wanted to guide mankind to make sure man would use new discoveries and technologies wisely, not just build another bigger bomb. It is likely to assume that such a first contact by an alien race would be the first scientists from Earth. They would have a more open mind to make sense of things, and they could then help to see where that alien first contact needs to lead next. These aliens already know how the future was going to go and that World War II was going to happen. They tried to explain that the horrific events of the war would also allow humans to learn about what should never happen again, and that this would offer a chance for collective wisdom to be shared amongst all humans. In 1933, Einstein fled Nazi Germany and moved to New Jersey, US. In January of that year, Hitler seized power illegitimately and his NSDAP party would abolish democracy and start to install a totalitarian fascist regime. In 1939, Einstein wrote a letter to then President Roosevelt telling him that in light of scientific progress elsewhere, including Nazi Germany, US should build an atomic bomb. Little known fact now is that after Einstein suggested that the US government build a bomb, a few years later he changed his mind and he contacted the US president again, urging him not to build an atomic bomb, to no avail. Why did Einstein change his mind? Maybe he was included in the small circle of scientists who made this first contact with aliens who explained that they wanted to make sure human scientific progress would not lead to so much destruction. After World War II ended, the scientists in touch with these aliens made an assessment about what humanity had learned from the horrors of World War II. They concluded that they did not learn enough and that if scientific progress were to continue at the same pace as back then, more reckless, dangerous technologies would be invented, even more destructive than the atom bomb. So they decided that they would give scientific knowledge about the future, as well as an alien technology device in the hands of a few people in the year 1947, with the goal of making sure that knowledge would only be used safely and wisely. This group of people were selected based on having their own insights and understanding about the world. If these 8 or so founders of the New World Order organization could then learn themselves first how to handle such powerful alien technology wisely, then they could teach others on how to do that. Mainly not using telepathic technology to gain absolute power was a key element here. But it is capable of refraining to use it for gaining power was the first key lesson. These founders of what is now the global secret New World Order organization had to make a choice on how to make sure knowledge would be used wisely. Keeping knowledge contained to a small group of people would make sure all of humanity had access to all this knowledge and also had the collective wisdom to use it wisely. This is where these founders of the NWO made their first fundamental mistake. They decided to only allow people they control to have all this knowledge, and everyone else had to be put on the wrong track with this information. Initially, their efforts to control and limit power were genuine, But as they were then starting to use telepathy more and more to read the minds of scientists, they also started to infiltrate other organizations, governments, and so on, initially mainly in the USA. The founding goal quickly diluted by the quest for more power over politics and the personal gain they got through using telepathy. This first contact group of scientists, together with these aliens, knew that this was likely to happen. This is why they made sure that they only gave the NWO founders the information needed to grow in influence for the next 50 years, and also added misinformation to NWO, would realize that they were wrong, and that what they had received was not enough for the future of mankind. For instance, the alien technology that enables telepathy is something that humans were not able to build and moreover are not able to understand exactly how it works. They were only told how to use it. If you look at where human progress stands today with brain-computer interfaces like the Neuralink implant, then this is still nowhere near what would be required for telepathy. The ability to read enough brain activity to translate into electrical impulses in the brain taught, to actually thoughts through AI and machine learning will require BCI devices, brain-computer interface devices that, based on what exists today, will still require 3 to 5 decades of further research and development. So what has NWO actually done with this telepathic technology? Well, they waited until progress in computer technology was far enough along so they could interface with and start using artificial intelligence and machine learning to finally, as of the mid-80s, make it possible to use voice communication over telepathy. This requires that an AI is able to map thought into language in both persons that can then use a voice-language communication over telepathy. Before this became possible, telepathy only allowed communication of feelings, and therefore several people had to be involved in the reading of thoughts of, say, a scientist to learn how the target person thinks, and then they could translate somewhat these emotional responses, feelings, into actual thoughts. One of the first new projects NWO launched in the mid-80s was Super AI MindSync. Is an AI that intended to select different people around the globe that had conflicting thoughts, opinion about something specific. This AI would then connect these two individuals so they could have conversations over telepathy to discuss and find some sort of common ground, common understanding. When this would happen on a large scale, people would reach more understanding of each other and ignorance and prejudice would gradually disappear. The team that was working on Super AI MindSync also already knew that NWO was corrupt and turned more and more into a mafia organization. I call Department of Mafia, DOM. Different local organizations of NWO were also tasked to make sure that when such telepathic conversations to resolve differences got out of hand and would turn into conflict or even violence in the real world, that these local organizations would then need to intervene to prevent things to escalate. This worked for a little while until some local organization decided to create conflict themselves that Super AI MindSync would then identify and start these telepathic conversations about. This turned into a way to add data pollution into this AI and keep it from ever achieving its goal to reach global understanding amongst all humans. Those who tried to add this data pollution also didn't realize in time that sooner or later Super AI MindSync might also involve them into these telepathic conversations, and when they did finally realize this, they found it important to create even bigger conflicting thoughts within others, just so Super AI MindSync would not put them into such telepathic conversations, arguments they knew they would not be able to get out of, which admitting it and seeing that they were wrong. They also tried to use Super AI MindSync as a tool to spread the propaganda doctrine by trying to hack into it and have it add messages into these conversations. This didn't work because the team who worked on this AI in the mid-80s made sure it would only be a black box, and when it was finished and went live, many of the people working on this project decided to take their own lives, so the knowledge on how it worked exactly and also how it could be hacked would no longer exist. Good to reiterate is that supremacy does not talk. It only brings two individuals into contact and lets them talk over telepathy unfiltered. A few years ago, now it's 2025, NWO decided to shut down Super Mindsick, one of the cornerstones of their operation. As a consequence, global alignment across the telepathic network is missing more and more each day, and new efforts to keep minds aligned have largely been insufficient and have failed. Coming back to why it was all a big setup, well, the information they got from the future only went as far as the year 2000. Beyond that, they were supposed to have stopped using telepathy and exposed all their doings to the world, letting all of mankind learn from what they did. They knew this, and instead of doing what was clear, they decided to give up and accept that they already had enough knowledge technology to grant them absolute power for the future, provided they made sure that as no new scientific progress could be made that might at some point not create a threat to their absolute power in a global fascist dictatorship where obedience is forced through telepathic mind control. What to do now? You should now have learned that certain technologies like telepathy should not be used. You should understand the mistakes you made by using telepathy. And you should explain all of humanity what you have learned from making these mistakes. This requires exposing all you did and explaining why you did these things.